Okay, so today we're going to look at the last part of the exponent rules. And 1-5, I just combined these together, the negative and 0 exponents. The negative should be really new to you and a little bit confusing, so we'll practice a lot. The 0 exponent, I think we talked about, where anything to the 0 equals 1. So that's pretty basic. Here's the rule for negative exponents. So in the rule for negative exponents, it states that a to the negative b equals 1 over a to the b. That's called the inverse. A cannot equal 0 on these. And if you have 1 over a to the negative b, that will equal a to the b, which is also the inverse. So basically, if you get a negative exponent, you need to flip that either to the bottom or back to the top, depending on where it is. If it's in the denominator, it goes to the numerator, and vice versa. Here's some examples for you. We have example 1, which is x to the negative 2 equals 1 over x squared. Basically, it's just the inverse, and it changes that 2 to a positive. Example 2, 6 to the negative 4th equals 1 over 6 to the 4th. Example 3 is a little bit different because I have parentheses here. So if you see one like this, where you get like a negative and a negative, especially if it's to a negative 1, all you have to do is write the inverse, but you keep it negative. Keep the 8 negative. Don't try to cancel these out. Just keep the 8 negative. Unless, of course, it was a 2, then you would square it and it would be positive, right? Example 4 is the opposite of example 2. I just want to show you how it works. If you have 1 in the denominator, it goes to the numerator. They're not always going to have 1s, so I want to show you the ones where you don't have the 1 in the numerator or denominator.
On number 4, it says 6
to the negative 4, and then 6 to the 4th.
Yeah.
So this rule right here. See? Okay. Number 5, example 5. This is one where you wouldn't have parentheses. And we talked about these before. If we don't have parentheses, then the negative kind of gets tacked on afterwards. Okay, so you can see what happens here. The negative stays on the outside pretty much, and then that's 3 squared, and that's 1/9, but you have to put the negative, so negative 1/9. Any questions on this one right here? It's okay? It looks kind of strange. So just watch out for those. Example 6, I put one where there's parentheses around this negative 3. So first you move the whole thing up to the numerator, and then you could just square it and make it 9. Example 7, sometimes Remember I said you wouldn't always have a 1 there? There's a 2 now. But the 2 does not have a negative exponent, so it stays where it is. But the a has a negative 3, so I need to move that up to the numerator. So this is just 2a cubed. Example 8 looks a little different. We have 4 to the negative 2 times 4 to the negative 3. These are the same bases, like bases. Going back to the first lesson on this. So first put them in the denominator to get rid of the negatives. And then add the exponents. If it asks you to solve or simplify further, then that's the 1024. Any questions on that one? It looks okay. So flip them, do the inverse, and then add the exponents. Example 9, I put some x's instead of numbers, but only one of them's negative here. There's 3 stars by this one. It must be important. It's a good test question. So I have x to the negative 5th times x squared. That means I need to put this x to the negative 5th in the denominator. X squared over x5. I wrote it in expanded form for you if you need to have it there. It's there. So I could go and cross these off. I could say, oh, okay, there's 2 of these here and 2 there. So there's 3 left. And that's 1 over x cubed. And you can see 5 minus 2 is 3. Last week we did it like this, where it was like the bigger number was on the top in the numerator, remember, when we subtracted? It works both ways though. Some people don't have to do this part because they already see it right here. So if you can see it or you have a shortcut, you can use it. It's fine with me. Any questions on this one? It's alright. Looks strange, but still subtracting. Yes?
Do you need the 1 versus the x?
You do need the 1 because the x cubed is in the denominator, so you need the 1. Yeah. If it was the other way around, like x cubed over 1, you could just leave it x cubed. Good question. Okay with this page? Okay. Couple more examples for this, the negative exponent stuff. So here's one where I have double negatives. I also put 2 stars by this. So a to the negative 2 over a to the negative 10. So you just flip the 2. They're both negatives, so flip them around and subtract to get a to the 8th. So 10 minus 2 is 8. Some people see the shortcut already. They don't need to do this middle step, right? Raise your hand if you kind of see this now. See where it's going. See the pattern? Flipping and subtracting for these ones anyway. Good. If you wanted to write this out in expanded form, you'd have to write 10 A's on the top and 2 A's on the bottom and cross them off. If you want to do that, that's fine. Okay, in your homework tonight, you're going to have to work backwards, and it'll say something like, write as a negative exponent. And this will probably be the most challenging part of the homework. And it will look something like this. It'll say, write 1 over 9, or it'll say 1 over something as a negative exponent. But you can't use -1. It's going to tell you can't use -1. This is the tricky part. So I can write 1/9 as 9 to the -1. I could do that. But now I have to think, how do I get rid of the -1? I know the square root of 9 is 3. So I think you're going to have to be dealing with square roots and cube roots here. So maybe play around with your calculators or the MyScript app. You can try Wolfram Alpha. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. And I say, okay, well 3 to the -2 is the same thing. Because that's 1 over 3 squared, and that's 1 over 9. Working backwards. Any questions on this part? It's okay. If you're not sure and you're using the MyScript app or even a calculator, you could put a square root symbol around one of these numbers. If it doesn't have a square root, it's going to have a cube root. So in your calculator, some function or some calculators have a little 3, like that. If you don't see that, you can raise your 9, like raise it up or put an arrow. On the cheaper calculators, they have that. And you could put that to a 1/3. A 1/3 exponent is the same as a cube root. Little tricks. Okay? You'll see it. Or you can just write that into the MyScript app too. Okay, last example. If you have something like this where you have to multiply, the first step is to move the negative exponent to either the numerator or denominator. Depends where it is. In this case, we're in the numerator. We're going to go to the denominator. So that's like the first step. Before you multiply anything, do that. So you have what? PEMDAS or parentheses exponent. So look at that exponent first. So now we have 2x over x to the 4th equals 2 over x cubed. Because x to the 4th minus the x to the imaginary 1 is 3. Questions on this one? This is okay? Okay, the last part of your notes deals with the 0 exponents, and if you get this, you don't need to write down all 3 examples. We have our 0 exponents. You can abbreviate to EXP if you want. This is when a to the 0 power equals 1. Again, a cannot be 0. And here's 3 examples. Like I said, maybe you only need to write down 1 to get it, but you can see they all equal 1. Fractions to the 0. Letters to the 0, numbers to the 0. If you have parentheses, it'll tell you that's the whole thing to the 0, right? That's that. And then I have a summary if you need it. It summarizes both of these. You can put it in your own words or abbreviate it if you'd like. So basically the summary is any non-zero number to the 0 power is 1. Any non-zero number to the negative power is the inverse of the power. Inverse. Inverse, almost like opposite, makes me think of opposite, right? Reverse, things like that. So when you do your homework tonight, like I said, only 10 problems, but there'll be a few like this, there'll be a few working backwards, and then the rest are just the basic stuff in your notes. And that will be due tomorrow for you guys. Any questions?